have you here this morning. I am so glad you made it out. Teachers, chaperones, parents, thank you guys so much for bringing them out here. I know the rigmarole it takes to get everyone there and up and out and organized. Something as simple as just like, hey, let's go a few miles up the road is days of work. So thank you guys so very much. If you can bring down just the music, Gabe. And so what we're going to be doing today, and here let me just kind of tell you our heart and our goals here today. So often at Trinity College, we have all sorts of different events that we have going on. We usually call them campus preview events. You have in your bag talking about our next campus preview event, and we would love for you to come out, see what life is like here in the day in the life of a college student. However, all right, what I know is some of you guys are in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade. You're maybe starting to think about college, all right? And so you're just not in that space yet. All right, and what I want to make sure is that you are, whatever it is that God has for you, that you are starting to think and plan for, God, what do you want from me? How have you gifted me, equipped me? All right, and then how can I use those gifts, talents, abilities to start serving you now? All right, because this is what I believe. We're a Bible college. We train people for ministry. We do have other things like organizational leadership and counseling and education and general studies. We have other fields, but we think everything kind of goes back to how do we serve the Lord in these different areas. So when we talk about being a Bible college, it just means we take way more Bible classes than what a regular Christian college would take. And so when I look at you young people, I'm saying, hey, I don't know what God has for you next, but I do know He is calling you into leadership in whatever area He would have you serve in. All right, we want you to become the leader we know God has designed you to be, and we want to help you become that now. I believe in this phrase, you are what you are becoming. You are what you are becoming. You aren't yet. There's even a Bible verse that talks about like, hey, one day when the Lord comes, we'll finally see what we really are, but not yet. We're not what we will be, but you are what you are becoming. And so we want to help you begin that journey on that road to being a good, godly Christian leader.
How's everybody doing this morning? Man, it's always dangerous being the first one out of the gate, right? Because you're getting here, kind of rolling out of bed. You're not sure, what's going on, what day it is. What day is today, by the way? Friday. The 13th. Huh? Any of you superstitious? Good. Because that would not work for what I want to present to you today. So, let me ask you this. Let's do this. I want you to raise your hand if you have to find yourself putting up with inner critic, that inner dialogue, that inner voice, that friend of yours. One person? Come on. I don't believe this. You're definitely asleep. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's no shame in this. Like, we can have everybody close your eyes so nobody sees you, right? But I want you to raise your hands high. I want to get a sense of what I'm dealing with in the room. Have to deal with that inner critic. Okay, actually that's low. Most of I saw a study recently that says 85% of adults deal with this inner voice, this inner dialogue that they have with themselves. And usually it's negative. Like, for those of you who raise your hands, like, why is that voice never a cheerleader? Why is it always telling me something I'm not and something I'm done wrong, right? Okay, how about imposter syndrome? Anybody deal with imposter syndrome? Can somebody define imposter syndrome for me? What is it?
Feeling like you don't belong where you are, even if you're in that space. Even if you've attained a certain level of whatever, achievement, or you have the skills or the knowledge or whatever, you still feel like you're not worthy. You're not the person that should be in that seat. So these kinds of voices in our head. By the way, I would say two things. Either some of you are afraid to raise your hand, or you guys are the most high achievers and clear-headed, clear thinkers in the world. Could be one or both. Well, I don't know which one it is. We'll find out. Okay? So the reality is these kinds of
thoughts that go in our head, really, when we're talking about leadership this morning, right? These kinds of things in our head really get in the way of being an effective leader. Because it raises this question of how can you lead when you don't even know yourself? These kind of questions these kind of things cause us to question who we are. And if we don't know who we are, how can we lead effectively? Because here's the deal, leadership is the influence of people, influence on people to attain a future or to reach a future that one, they can't envision, and two, they don't think is attainable. Right? That takes some significant confidence in yourself. And if you don't know who you are, how can you lead others if you can't even lead yourself? And how can you lead yourself if you don't even know yourself? Right? So what we want to get to today is how do we get to that place? Well, what information is out there to tell us who we are? So I just pulled these quotes up. I've seen some of these. I found some of these in the search. But it's quotes like these that is what people tell us how we know who we are. And sort of the message, if you put them all together, the common message is what we do determines who we are. Like, man, if there's a goal out there, we're gonna put our mind to it. We're gonna put all that we have into it. We're gonna give it all. We're gonna succeed. And that, achievement tells us we're a success, right? Maybe. On the surface, it looks that way. But there's sort of this elephant in the room that nobody is willing to address. What happens on the day you can't perform? You have a bad day? Does that change who you are?
No.
If circumstances beyond your control prevent you from achieving, are you less of a person? No. See, it doesn't make sense to think about this idea or to base your life on what I do determines who I am. Raise your hand if you know this person. Oh, come on, I know you guys are asleep now. Somebody tell me who that is. Yeah, what's her name? Simone Biles, thank you. Yeah, the greatest gymnast of all time. People are calling her not just the greatest gymnast, the greatest athlete of all time. She's doing things physically no other human has ever done. She's like galactically elite, right? If you know the story, if you watched any of the Olympics, you know the story. This was all over the news, and they did all this kind of bio on her. So 4 years ago, Tokyo, July 27th, 2021, she had already won gold medals, right? By the way, so the 2021 Olympics was supposed to be her final, right, the going out party, so to speak. So vault competition, she's the first one, 7:45 p.m. She goes up to do the vault, a vault that she's already won gold medals for. She goes to do the vault, can't do it. Can't do it. She can't get her body to do it. She had what gymnasts call the twisties. It's this sort of sense where you begin to lose your spatial awareness, right? When you spin around, like your eyes can't really tell where you are. You have to depend upon your body and just the training that you've done over and over and over and over and over again to tell you where you are. Well, her body let her down. So she had to withdraw from the competition. Oh, by the way, on this twisties thing, it's not just in gymnastics. It happens in other sports too. Anybody involved in athletics, play sports? Okay, you may have heard this term before. It's called the yips. Ever heard that? Does that sound familiar? So it happens a lot. Golfers, they go to do a putt. They can't make a 2-foot putt to save their life. Baseball players, they lose their swing. Pitchers can't find the strike zone. It happens to musicians sometimes, where they're practicing this really challenging piano piece, for instance,
And they're practicing 6-8 hours a day, using on the same riffs over and over and over and over again, trying to drill into their head so that it just becomes automatic. Well, all of a sudden, their hands just stop working. And they don't know why. The technical term for it is called focal dystonia. And we don't know a whole lot about it because it's still fairly recent discovery. But essentially what happens is the neurons in your brain that control fine muscle movement sort of get fried. And your muscles don't respond anymore. And so for these musicians, their hands just stopped working. So back to Simone Biles. She pulls out from the competition, gets crucified in the media, social media. People that can't even roll out of bed without hurting themselves are calling her a quitter. So she has to take 2 years off, do nothing related to gymnastics, come back and basically learn again how to be a gymnast. And the rest of the story is like this storybook ending. She comes back, she competes, she wins another gold medal. Interestingly enough, she has more influence now than she did before this happened. She had to persevere and go through more adversity to re-enter gymnastics than she ever did before. Why am I talking about Simone Biles? Being the best gymnast of all time is not who Simone Biles is.
Right.
It's who Simone Biles is that lets her be the best gymnast of all time. Raise your hand if you know this person. Yeah, I didn't think so. This is Rick Stanton. Everybody, meet Rick Stanton. Rick Stanton is a retired firefighter in the West Midlands Fire Service in the UK. So Rick also happens to be a scuba diver. And for Rick, getting his path into scuba diving was not an easy one. Growing up, because he's an introvert. So growing up, he had really struggled interacting with people, interacting with his peers, playing other sports. Like it just didn't fit in, didn't work for him. By chance, he happened to pick up scuba diving. There's a river near his home, so he started diving and found out it was a very comfortable environment for him. So he started doing that. Why am I talking about a retired firefighter from the UK? Because Rick Stanton happens to be one of the most accomplished cave divers in the world. You see, he dives hundreds of feet, not just underwater, hundreds of feet underground, underwater. That's an environment that you and I would feel very claustrophobic, right? And I would be petrified. To have hundreds of feet of rock and water above my head, that would scare me to death, y'all. For Rick, he's very much at home. He's comfortable in that kind of environment. He eventually kept perfecting his craft. He started inventing gear and certain tools so that he could stay down longer and dive deeper. He set 2 world records for the deepest cave dive and the longest penetration cave dive. And then, in 2018, he led the effort to rescue 13 boys who had gotten trapped in a cave in Thailand. That event was made into a movie called 13 Lives. Viggo Mortensen played his role in that movie. And again, just like Simone Biles, why am I talking about this? What's my point? Rick Stanton is not, being the best, one of the most accomplished cave divers in the world is not who Rick Stanton is. Being who Rick Stanton is put him in position to be one of the most effective cave divers in the world. See the difference? Who we are makes a difference. So, the point here is I want to challenge this idea. It's a very common idea that we are what we do. See, everything in the world would have us believe that what we do determines who we are. I'm here to tell you that's a lie. I want to flip this idea in your mind and instead think of, well, the animation's not working, but flip this around on the screen and realize that it's who we are that determines what we do.
who we are determines what we do. See, discovering your identity brings confidence, it brings clarity, it brings purpose to your life. So how do we go about finding out who we are? Well, the first thing to do is to eliminate what we aren't. Okay, the first step in eliminating what we aren't is you aren't who you were in your past. You know, if I ask you who you are, almost all of us, this is my experience in coaching, almost all of us look to who we've been in the past to define ourselves. And it's natural, I get it, but it really makes no sense when you come right down to it. It's not very helpful, and it can be very distracting, and it's limiting. A guy named Werner Erhard said this quote that has become so powerful for me, and that is, you create your future from your future, not your past. You create your future from your future, not your past. Secondly, you aren't who your environment says you are. You're not what people say about you. You're not the likes you get on social media. You're not your physical limitations. You're not what has happened to you. You're not the sum of your achievements and failures. You are you. You're not what your environment says you are. Next, you aren't who you are today. What I mean by this is that our identity is not a fixed thing. Psychologists in recent years have come to call this narrative identity. And so the idea is that it's sort of like your identity is like a script that's being written as you live it out. If you don't like the script of your identity, guess what? You get to rewrite it. And if you didn't like it what it was today, you can let tomorrow be whatever you want it to be. It's a challenge, but it's a real thing. The last one is you're not who your inner critic says you are. And this one's a little tricky. So I want you to sit up straight, buckle in, because this is going to be, I've got a lot of content to run you through. When you think about who we are as humans, we have essentially two parts. We have a spiritual part and a physical part. So there's the spiritual part is like our spirit, our soul. The physical part is our human body. And both of these parts together operate together this is kind of our existence. So as it relates to our identity, what this breaks down to is the mind and the brain. So the mind is the part of your spirit or soul that believes. It's a part of where your identity exists. It's the part of you that thinks, feels, and chooses. It's the part where your conscience is, where your will is. All of these exist in this immaterial part of you called your mind. Your brain, on the other hand, is the physical part. It's the tissues inside your skull. It's the neurons, it's the synapses, the neurotransmitters, the proteins, and all the energy. I'm reaching the limit here on trying to explain this. It's really a mystery, frankly. But all of the activity that happens in our physical brain is essentially energy that is stored and transmitted, like transmitted across wires. So that is the brain. Now, Brain Science 101, we're going to go even deeper here. Brain Science 101. The brain, controls everything in our body, right? It's active 24/7. Our brain is always working. The part of the brain that we understand as thoughts is energy, again, that's expressed or transmitted across these synapses. And these thoughts exist as in our physical brain. This includes memories, it includes images that you've seen, it includes information like your cell phone a number, your email address, your understanding of what 2 + 2 equals. It could be emotions, it could be things that you're happy about, things that you're sad about, memories of painful experiences, happy experiences, traumatic experiences. All of these things are retained in your brain. So that's thoughts. Now, are you staying with me? I told you this is a lot. There's three levels of thoughts. First level is conscious.
Conscious thoughts, that's what you're thinking about right now. Like, man, that's a cool blue color shirt that Damian has on. That's in your conscious awareness, right? There's subconscious thoughts, which it's not in your current, conscious awareness, but you could bring it up to your conscious awareness if you wanted to. The third level is unconscious. Your brain has stored a lot of unconscious thoughts that you don't even know exist. But they're there. And your brain is chewing on them and working on them all the time. So not only is there 3 levels of thoughts, conscious, subconscious, unconscious, there's 2 types of thoughts. Either of those thoughts could be either healthy or unhealthy. By healthy, I mean, just like the name implies, they are effective thoughts. They help your brain process things. Your brain loves to think about them because it helps the tissues in your brain work correctly in a healthy way. Or they're unhealthy. I like to call those toxic. It's a little bit of a trigger word these days, but it's appropriate for what we're talking about. A toxic thought, by the way, everybody has toxic thoughts. If you have a toxic thought, it doesn't mean that you're like weird. You'd almost be weird if you didn't have them. So the issue with a toxic thought is it's a different energy wave in your brain. It's a different energy level. The tissues that hold toxic thoughts are different from tissues that hold healthy thoughts. And they cause your brain to inflame. They cause your brain to have to work harder. And there's lots of downstream negative effects from holding on to too many toxic thoughts. All right? 3 levels of thoughts, 2 types of thoughts. Are you with me? You didn't know you were going to come to biology class this morning, did you? All right. So, how these thoughts, conscious, subconscious, unconscious, and the types, healthy and toxic, how all of these thoughts interact in the mind and the brain is what's really cool. So let me explain it to you. I want to give you an illustration. When I came here this morning, when I traveled, I came by car, right? So I was in control. I knew when I wanted to leave. I knew when I wanted to get there. And I told the car where to go. I steered it. I pushed on the gas. I pushed on the brake. I was in control. But in traveling, I was limited by what the car could and couldn't do. It couldn't fly. I would have preferred that. But my car, does your car fly? Not yet. Like mine doesn't fly. I couldn't go from point A to point B. I had to go where the roads were. I had to deal with other cars, other traffic. I had to stoplights, right? So in my travel, I was in control, but I was limited by what the car could and couldn't do. Make sense? Now, as it relates to what we're talking about today, the mind is the driver, and the brain is the car. So what that means is the mind is in control and tells the brain how to function and what to do. The brain responds to the mind and is actually shaped by the mind. This is a term called neuroplasticity. It's amazing. Like think of it this way. Your mind says, I want to think about a red apple. Well, if you don't have the neuron structure in your brain to support that thought, your brain automatically kicks in and says, and the more you think about a red apple, the more your brain cells will be generated, and the neurons connecting your brain cells will help support this thought, because the brain's going, well, the mind for some reason wants to think about a red apple. So we better get to work and create the structure to support that thought. It's amazing how this works. It's neuroplasticity. It works all the time. Some periods of your life, it's more evident when you're younger, for instance, than other times, but it's a constant process that's going on in your brain. So the implications of all this, you still with me? Mm-hmm. Have I lost you? Good. I don't think I have. This is fascinating to me, but sometimes I can get kind of geeky. So I just want to make sure I don't over geek on this, right? So there's some incredible implications here. One is
the mind can let itself be driven by the car. So it's like this morning I could have gotten in my car and said, car, go to Trinity College, and gone to sleep, right? I would have given up control of my traveling to the car. The same thing can happen to the brain. So we need to be careful not to give up control of our thoughts to our physical brain. Because if there's a thought that's in our brain, our mind doesn't know the difference. If we're not conscious of this and intentional, we think just because we got a thought in our head, it's legit, it's true. May not be the case. Might be true, might be a lie. How do you know the difference? Right? Got to pay attention. Got to be conscious of what your brain is thinking. The brain, on the other hand, wants to detox. So the brain operates effectively when it's dealing with all healthy thoughts. When it has an unhealthy thought, toxic thought, it knows this and it's trying to get rid of it. It's trying to detox, right? Just like our body, right? Our body's constantly trying to get rid of things that are infections and stuff that's not good for our bodies. So our brain is bringing to our conscious attention of these things. Remember what unhealthy toxic thoughts are? Fears, biases, resentment, judgment, painful memories, traumatic experiences, unforgiveness. These things are unhealthy for our brain to hold on to. And our brain's constantly trying to bring these fears and anxieties and stuff to our conscious mind. I don't know about you, but generally speaking, my experience is when people encounter a thought like that, what's the first thing they do? They bury it. They try to distract themselves from it. They don't engage with it because who likes to engage with something that you're afraid of? Doesn't make any sense, right? But when we disengage from it, it goes right back into our brains, and our brains keep processing on it. And the toxic environment in our brain continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse. We get actually inflammation in our brain, and then it spills over into the rest of our body because our brain's controlling every function in our body, right? So now our anxiety level goes up, our heart rate goes up, cortisol levels goes up. We start getting all these hormones in our body that get out of whack. It affects our GI system. It affects anxiety levels. The hormones that control a peaceful environment in your mind go down. The ones that control, hey, you need to be afraid and alert because there's danger looming, those go up. And you live in this constant chronic state of anxiety because we're not processing toxic thoughts. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
God designed our bodies to work this way. So if we can just understand that, we can help put ourselves in a place of health and peace. So all of this is to say, all of that Brain Science 101 and how our mind and how our brains interact, all that is to say, your inner critic, your imposter that lives inside your head is a toxic thought. It looks, feels, smells, crawls, walks, talks like a lie. And your brain's trying to get rid of it. So recognize that and recognize what to do about it. So how do we get to that place where we know where we are? Well, let's put it this way. If you can get to the place where you're able to start detoxing your thoughts, getting rid of processing them, getting rid of them, then that's part of how you eliminate who you aren't. So once you've eliminated who you aren't, you can begin to reinforce who you are. First of all, you are absolutely unique. You are absolutely unique. You're a masterpiece. There will never be another you. You are a masterpiece. You're not some kind of accident.
Right.
You're made to be you. You're made to be just you. In fact, there will never be another human like you. There's 8 billion people on the planet right now. None of them are like you. There's 19 billion people that have come before us. None of them were like you. I don't know how many more billions of people are going to come before time is done.
None of them will be like you. You are a masterpiece. You are a masterpiece. Thirdly, you're not who you are. Well, I'll say it this way. You are who you want to be. In other words, remember that idea of the script that you're writing every day of your identity? You get to write that script. What goes in that script is the things that you really want to be, the things you aspire to be, the character traits, the beliefs, the values, the habits, the kind of relationships that you build into your life, the kind of things that you do to invest in other people. All of these are a reflection of who you want to be. You get to design that. Not the world. Nobody else gets to design that for you. Nobody else can tell you that. You alone are the one that gets to put that together. And because you're unique, and because you're the only you that will ever exist, and because you have a target identity that you want to be, the natural outflow of that is you have a purpose that only you can fulfill. There are things that you can do in your life uniquely and authentically in ways that nobody else ever will in human history. You are absolutely unique. So, what does this have to do with leadership? Well, frankly, everything. This is the foundation for leadership. So, when you think about how does my identity impact, how I go about influencing other people, right? If you don't get to the place where you can get rid of your toxic thinking and get rid of that inner critic and that imposter syndrome, I can virtually guarantee you that you will become dependent on everything that happens around your life and your world to define you. And I call that outside in. And this is the natural process that almost all of us go through. So when I stop to think about, okay, who am I? The first thing I do is I look back. What's happened in my life? It's like looking back, for some reason, is our point of reference. It makes sense. It's known. I've got history. But also, all of the bad stuff, all my failures and stuff like that my inner critic loves to remind me of, by the way, all that is in my past. So then when I think about the future and who I want to be in the future, what comes to mind is like, the best I can come up with is some new and improved version of who I was. I have no idea who I want to be. I just want to be better than that. So to be this person that I have no idea what it is, how do I go about being that person that's this mystery person? Well, I experiment. I try stuff. I do this and it works. Great, I'm a success. Oh wait, I do this and I fail. Now I'm a failure. And this goes on and on and on, day after day after day. Does this sound reasonable to you guys? It's exhausting to me just talking about it. No. The alternative, instead of being outside in, is to be inside out. And in inside out, when I think about who I am, I don't look back to define myself. I think about who I want to be. What's my target identity? If I could describe the perfect me, and I don't mean like I'm perfect, I'm buff, I got a six-pack, and I got money, and and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way that God designed me to be. How can I be the best person, the best one, how do I want to say this? The best version of that person. Right. That's who I want to be. When I'm clear on that, then I can look back. And it's okay, by the way, to look back and get wisdom, get perspective, to realize how did we get here? But I don't look back for definition. I look back to get wisdom. Now, with this clarity in my mind and who I am, now when I think about going out in the world, particularly in the context of leading and influencing others, now I set goals that are purposeful, that line up with who I want to be. And my activities are focused. I'm not experimenting. I know what works and what doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
From a leadership standpoint, like I said before, this is really critical because leadership is, at its core, leadership is not power and control.
Leadership is service. Okay? If you're living inside out, like I said before, you're depending upon the outcome of your leadership to define you. If you're expecting, if you're leading a group of people and you're dependent upon how they react to your leadership to define you, that's codependency, y'all. It's a setup for disaster. So instead, let's live inside out. Become a servant. Recognize that living inside out brings you stability. It brings you confidence. You know who you are, and by the way, you know who you're not. You're not trying to be somebody you're not. You're able to lead for the best interests of the people that you lead, not your own interests. If you need something from the people that you lead, then you can't lead them effectively. You can't lead people you can't lead people when you need something from them. You just can't. So, I just want you to understand that for me, I'm going to kind of close or sort of land the plane on this. This is not fortune cookie psychology for me. Like, this is not pop psychology kind of, motivational talking. This is a very personal thing for me. It's maybe kind of hard to see in the picture. This is my Medicare card. Huh? In 18 days, I'm going to be 65. According to the government, that means I'm officially old. For 65 years, I lived with this inner critic that told me I was a failure. And I believed it. It was part of my identity. Every day. Constantly in my ear. I came to faith in my mid-20s. And my new beliefs in the Bible told me that was a lie. And my mind just embraced this new truth. It was like life-giving. My brain, however, held on to the toxic thought. So for 40 years, I had these competing thoughts in my head. You're a masterpiece. I'm a masterpiece. No, you're a failure. I'm unique. Why can't you be like everybody else? Man, I did this thing and it lined up. I just felt energized and so fulfilled, and the outcome was great, and I really helped somebody else. It was wonderful. Yeah. You know what? Even a broken watch is right twice a day. 40 years this went on. It's not until the last few years that I learned how to do the intentional work of getting rid of toxic thoughts. And that now is my purpose, to help people understand that they can get rid of the lie that their inner critic is telling them who they are. I don't know Simone Biles, but I'm guessing she has a sense of her identity. And I guess that she's, oh, by the way, I don't want to forget this. Don't wait until you're old to realize that you don't have to be somebody that you're not. Make that decision now. I don't know Simone Biles personally, but my guess is she has a good handle on her identity. She could have just caved and been who everybody told her she needed to be, but instead she stayed the course, and now, like I said earlier, she's got more influence than she ever did before. I don't know Rick Stanton. I've never met him, never had a conversation with him. He could have conformed to what everybody growing up, what everybody told him he needed to be. But I have heard him talk on camera about how being himself has brought him great fulfillment and satisfaction, in knowing that being himself allowed him to do what only a handful of people in the world could do. So what about you? Are you in a place where you know your identity well enough that you can find stability in the chaos of your life? Or are you going to continue living from this outside-in posture that makes you dependent upon what the world and your biggest critics tell you are? Especially the critic that's in your head. Your leadership opportunity is going to be a challenge, frankly. You're coming into leadership and influence at a time where it's a difficult time in human history. I'll just put it that way. Consumerism runs everything. Everybody's talking, nobody's listening. Everything is so divisive. And in order to win, that means somebody else has got to lose. You know, the life expectancy in the West for the first time in recorded history is actually in decline. And mostly because of preventable lifestyle diseases. The suicide rate of adults in the last 20 years, that sounds like a long time to you guys. 65, not that long. The suicide rate in the last 20 years for all adults has gone up 36%. And for people ages 20 to 24, it's gone up 63%. 63%, y'all. Come on. You think this isn't having an effect? It's having a drastic effect. Finding your leadership opportunity won't be hard. It'll be all around you. But your greatest leadership competency in leading others will be to know yourself and to lead yourself first. Your greatest leadership competency in leading others will be to know yourself and to lead yourself first. I know you can do it. I believe in you. So go and do it. Thank you.
All right, well, good morning. Morning. Oh boy, we're going to start again. Good morning. Good morning. All right, well, good to see you today. My name is Keith Brickell. I've lived here in Tampa for about 20 years. I'm originally from Massachusetts. Are there any Red Sox, Patriots, Tom Brady fans in the room?
Tom Brady.
There's a few. Oh boy. Okay. I'm married. I've got 2 boys. My oldest just started college, USF, 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to share a couple things that he learned leadership-wise when he was in high school. But like Rob said, my background is in sales and marketing. I work for a large global corporation right now. I've traveled all around the world the last 10 years to our different offices, and that's been a lot of fun. But the thing that I'm most passionate about in my career, and I think maybe one of the reasons why God has me here in Tampa, is for the Tampa Bay Leadership Prayer Breakfast. This prayer breakfast, this will be the 53rd year of the prayer breakfast, and this isn't just a prayer breakfast. But this is an opportunity when we bring the leaders of Tampa Bay together for prayer and to give them the gospel of Jesus Christ. And at the end of my talk, we're going to talk a little bit about, you're not in your career, whatever career you go into, you're in there for a different reason than what you think. And we're going to talk about that toward the end. So I have no idea what my time limit is, so we're going to just shoot for 30 minutes, and you can wave a flag if I'm going too long. Being from Massachusetts, I talk, and I talk fast. Okay, so you're going to have to keep up today. So what I'm going to share with you is a compilation of notes that I have been taking for years. I now do it on my app in my phone. And as I'm meeting people, traveling, I make notes about leadership. People that I meet, organizations I deal with, and I write those thoughts down. So when Joe reached out to me, I just went to the well of all these notes I've been keeping for years and put together today's talk. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you just a few random leadership tips and thoughts to start, okay? And then I'm going to give you 4 things about being a leader now. Does that sound good? All right, so buckle up and let's go. Here's the first thing. Number 1, go to your bags, take out your notebooks. That's your first leadership lesson. Everybody get their notebook? If you don't have your notebook, take notes on your phone, okay? And our first point up on the screen, the game's going to put up there for us, is take notes. Take notes. Observe and take notes. Over the years, I've met a lot of people. I have met CEOs, I've met governors, I've met senators, I've met a lot of big name pastors, and I like to write down and take notes things that they say. Like, I hope today you're taking notes. By the way, the last speaker today, Rob, gonna blow your mind. So you better take notes of that one, okay? And Damian, what we just heard, that was awesome. But learn to take notes, okay? Write down the things that you would want to do as a leader. Write down the things that you would not want to do as a leader. You're gonna learn in life, there's a lot of bad leaders out there. You wanna write those things down. Man, this leader did this, and boy, I don't want to do that one day when I become a leader. It's important to write those things down. Now, the second point which is kind of an extension of taking notes, is journal. Okay, after you take some notes about, boy, this person did this and it was really good. My boss did this one day. I like how they treated that person. Give your thoughts to it. Okay, take bullet points, then give thoughts and learnings to your notes. How did you feel? How do you want to act? How can you apply what you've observed? Okay, so take notes. Here's the great thing about leadership. Leadership is lifelong learning. Okay, there's no one book that someone's going to hand you one day and say, here is all the things you need about leadership. It's in this one book. You'll never need to read another. No, neither is there a person who has all the answers for leadership. Here's what's cool about leadership. Just today, in the few hours that you're here, you're going to get exposed, and already have been exposed, to a lot of different viewpoints on leadership. Man, some of the stuff Damian said, wow. Grab his book while you're here. Maybe some things that I'll say, some things that Rob said. We all have our unique perspectives. And your whole life, leadership learning is endless. That's what's so cool about it. So write, journal, and take notes. Okay? All right. Here's another one for you. Here's number 3. Have a question ready. Have a question ready. Say, Keith, what do you mean by have a question ready? As you go through life, you're going to, without even realizing it, you're going to just be in front of somebody when you least expect it. Like, you literally may have a chance to meet Governor DeSantis. Governor DeSantis wandered into our church a couple years ago. Wow, Governor DeSantis came to a worship service here at our church. Rick Scott came to our church, senator, a couple weeks ago, 2 days before an election, but he showed up. It was great. But you don't know, someday when you get in the workforce, you're going to have the chance to meet your CEO. Like, he may come and do like a little workshop with you. You're going to meet people. And sometimes when we meet those people, what can happen? We don't know what to say. Oh my goodness, what do I ask the CEO of our company? What do I ask our divisional vice president? What do I ask the leading partner in our law firm? Whatever you might do. Have a question ready. I'm going to give you mine in just a second, okay? There's a gentleman, he just passed away a couple weeks ago. His name is Pat Williams. Pat Williams, for you basketball fans like me, was the founder of the Orlando Magic. How many of you have been to an Orlando Magic game in Orlando? Yeah, right? Pat Williams brought basketball to the state of Florida and is one of the greatest sports executives of our era. Pat Williams passed away a few weeks ago, but I had a chance, he spoke at our prayer breakfast a number of years ago, and on a couple of occasions, I had a chance to spend time in his office in Orlando and had dinner with him as well. Pat Williams is a leadership guru. If you go on Amazon, he has written dozens of books on leadership. And most of his books, he wrote by asking a question and having a question ready. And I remember he said to me, Keith, in my job as a sports executive, I meet other sports executives, I meet dignitaries, and he said, I meet athletes. And he said, the first time Michael Jordan came to Orlando to play, I wanted to meet Michael Jordan. And he said, when Michael Jordan would travel on the road, there was always people protecting him. You could not get near him when he came to town at all. So he said, I asked his people, hey, can I just have 5 minutes with Michael in the locker room before the game tonight? And they said, sure, Mr. Williams, you can come meet Michael Jordan. And he said, I was starstruck. I mean, here I am, the founder of the Orlando Magic, and I was starstruck by meeting Michael Jordan. But he said, I went into that encounter with, I'm going to just have one question and let him talk. And his question was something like, Michael, what makes a great teammate? And then he said, everywhere I go in my pocket, I keep a pen and a pad of paper, small little piece of paper. And when I ask people that one question, I start writing down what they say. And from doing that for decades, Pat Williams has become one of the greatest leadership gurus. Go pick up some of his books, they're fascinating. But have a question always in your back pocket. Mine is, and this is a little bit stolen, a little bit adapted, but it's, hey, what's your best leadership advice? If the governor were to walk in, the CEO of Microsoft were to walk in that back door, we'd all be like, ooh, ah. And if you had a chance to ask them one question, what would you ask them? Mine is, what's your best leadership advice? And you know what? That one question will open up a treasure trove I have found over the years, okay? So have a question in your back pocket. The next one, sounds the same, but it's different, is ask questions, right? Ask questions. This is maybe the greatest thing, and forgive me, my mouth gets dry, so I'm gonna be sipping on water a little bit. This may be the best, most valuable tool that someone taught me. I don't know about you, but Y'all get a little bit nervous sometimes when you're just one-on-one talking with someone. Some of you have done job interviews. Some of you have been on a job interview before, right? You go into that job interview and it's just like, what am I going to say? Like, they're going to ask me questions. What do I say, right? And I was that way. For the longest time in my career, I was so nervous talking to people. But I learned the way to get comfortable and to control a conversation is to ask questions, okay? So some of you, you're in high school, you're gonna be doing interviews for college. You might be trying to get a job. Young lady back there said she worked at Chick-fil-A, you had to do a job interview. The thing that has helped me most in my career when I go into something like a job interview is I take charge of that conversation by asking questions, okay? The opposite of that is you coming in and what we call sometimes doing the vomit, okay? What I mean by that is our natural instinct is to come into a conversation like that and just try to tell people everything we know, right? And make ourselves look good. Reverse that paradigm and ask questions and you will look even smarter, okay? In sales with what I do, if I have an hour-long meeting with somebody, I only want to talk for 10 minutes of that, 15 minutes of it. For 45 minutes, I want to ask questions and let them talk. You know what happens when you ask questions and you let the other person talk? Two things happen. Number one, they feel good about themselves. Because people love talking about themselves. Yeah, let me tell you about this business. Let me tell you about this job. Let me tell you about our department. Let me tell you about how Chick-fil-A runs, right? The other thing is, you're going to come away looking like the smart one by asking questions, okay? So before anything, some people have job interviews probably this fall. Before you go in, have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions lined up to ask, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Here's the last little tip. Last little tip. We're going to get into 4 things about leading now. Energy and enthusiasm wins the day. Write that down. Energy and enthusiasm wins the day. Kind of goes back to our last point. That when we go into, I'm using job interviews, but an interview or something, we want to feel like, man, what am I going to say? How can I impress them with what I know? Okay? Now, this is not a political illustration. Okay, so hang with me. Donald Trump, before he ran for president 10 years ago, was a very well-respected businessman. Okay? Great empire. You go to New York, he's built so many of those skyscrapers. Go to Chicago, you'll see all the towers, okay? I heard him give a talk a number of years ago. And he was actually known, it's kind of overshadowed now, it's a really good leadership guru, like listening to him talk about how he built his empire. But someone asked him a question one time, and I heard this. They said, Mr. Trump, what type of person do you look for to hire into the Trump organization? I mean, the Trump brand is synonymous with the best, finest in real estate, skyscrapers, golf courses. Are you looking for someone who knows a lot about real estate, who knows a lot about golf course design? He said, no, I don't. Those aren't the people that I hire. He said, you know who I hire? I hire the one who comes into my office. They may not know everything about our business and how to do it. They may not have a lot of experience in it. But if they come into my office with energy, enthusiasm, and passion, they're hired right there. He said, if they're into it and they understand it and they're energetic, they look me in the eye and they give me a firm handshake, good to meet you, Mr. Trump, that's the person I want in my organization. And I'm telling you, energy and enthusiasm and asking questions is going to make you so much smarter, look so much smarter, and be so much smarter than you ever would if you try to concoct and try to impress people with how much you know. Does that make sense? Yeah. Try it sometime. Go into a setting and don't be the one with your head down. Go in there with, shake a hand and say, man, I'm glad to meet you, sir, ma'am, your professor. Try it with your professor when you go in school, even some of you that are in college. Sit down with your professor, show energy and enthusiasm, and you will get the job and you will be the one that people want to follow. Okay? Good?
Yeah.
Are we all still with me? Okay. So those are the first just random leadership tips. All right? It only took 11 minutes. All right, here's the second part. The time to lead is now. The time to lead is now. You're going to hear me mention my son a lot. He just graduated from Calvary Christian High School in May. 3 weeks ago, he started as a freshman at USF, and I have learned a lot from him in leadership. My 18-year-old. He's schooling me on how to be a leader, okay? when he got into high school 4 years ago, well, 5 years ago now, like, it's a long time since I had any exposure to high school. Okay, I've been out of high school for a little bit, and my high school in New England was a little bit smaller than some of the schools around here. So he gets into high school, and I'm like, man, the opportunities in high school are way beyond what I had in high school. I mean, there's opportunities for sports, there's opportunities for student government, there's opportunities for clubs. Calvary, when he started, was just starting their STEM group, you know, science, technology, all that. And I'm like, there's just a lot to get involved with, and there's opportunities to lead, okay? And at this age group, we tend to think about, one day, I want to be a leader in this field. One day I want to be a leader in business. One day I want to be a leader in, you know, legal at a law firm. Or one day I want to go into medicine, be a leading doctor, okay? And that's how we think. But if we want to lead later, we got to learn how to lead right now. Yeah. And in this culture and in this age, you guys have so many opportunities to lead. And sometimes they're right in front of us and we don't even see it. Okay? So here's what I want to do. I want to give you, well, let me add this. As you're starting to think about college, okay, we took my son through this journey the last 2 years, finding the right college for him. And we visited colleges all across the country. And we did all the college interviews. Colleges are going to look at your resume, not necessarily your job resume, but your leadership resume. Yes. They wanted him to submit a resume of all the leadership things you did through high school. I was like, wow, how about that? So he documented all 4 years of the things that he did in high school. And those colleges ate it up. They're like, we haven't seen a resume like this. So you've got to start to find places to lead. Now, here's a funny thing. I like you in the back. We got to meet after. I like you.
I think we probably already have friends that are connected.
I think so. So my son just started 7th grade 3 weeks ago. 7th grade. We walk into 7th grade orientation. And you know what they said to the 7th graders? Hey, 7th graders, the days of being a kid, now I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the days of being a kid are over. Right now is when it starts in 7th grade. Like right now is when high schools are going to start to look at what you're doing in junior high and middle school. Because now some of these high schools, they're accepting people. You got to apply to get into some of these high schools. So I'm trying to tell my 7th grader, hey, leadership starts now in 7th grade. Now, this is what, 9th through 12th grade mostly? In here, we don't have any 7th, 8th graders, do we? No. Anyone? No, high school, okay. So, the time to lead is now. Now, I'm going to give you 4 statements that are kind of, they all have the letter V in them, I believe. And then I got a little tagline. So what I want to do is I want to take each of these statements and try to make it practical to where you guys are, okay? So, let's put the first one up there. Be visible. Time to lead is now. How do you lead now? Be visible. I've worked for some really cool companies in my 20 plus years of being in corporate America. I've met some great leaders. I've worked for some big billion-dollar corporations with offices all over the world. When I got to these companies, I kind of made it my goal at each company. I want to meet the CEO. Like, man, if you're running a billion-dollar corporation, like, there's got to be something to you, right? There's got to be some leadership in there that I can learn from. And I've come across, look, I told you when I take notes, I write the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've worked for 2 CEOs that disappointed me. And because they weren't visible, all right? I worked for one CEO, and I worked for one of the largest companies here in Tampa Bay for a number of years. And I was working at this company for a while, and I'm like, who's running this place? Like, this is a big company. We've got, a couple thousand employees. Many of them are spread across the country in offices and different. Who is the CEO? Like, who is in charge, right? And so I started asking people, like, what's the deal? I'm like, well, I'm going to disguise names here, but Bob is the CEO. And Bob, our campus in St. Pete was huge. They're like, Bob works in this building in the far back left corner of, like, near the woods in the back. And he had his own side door made, and he comes in and out, and he doesn't really talk to anybody. And I'm like, say that again? Like, he's the CEO, and he comes in a private door, leaves at, comes in at 9, leaves at 5, and like, really? Wow. Work for another company, this is even better. same question. Like, what's the guy's name? Who runs this thing? Like, oh, well, his name's, again, I'm making up a name here, Jim. Jim lives on a private island in the Caribbean in a mansion, and he stays there. Never leaves. He's got 2 or 3 people on the executive team he deals with. That's all. He didn't talk to anybody else in this company. I'm like, and then you know what? In each of those companies, when there was some turbulent times, you're left wondering who's in charge, okay? Let's bring it home a little bit more. I had a friend of mine who went and interviewed for one of the largest churches in America to do tech, to do what you guys are doing back there. They needed a tech leader. So he was all excited about it. Man, it's a great church. They're doing a lot for the Lord, missions, church planning. So he goes up and comes back, and I said, how'd your interview go? He said, it's really weird. He said, I thought I was interviewing to be the head of production, audio, video. And in church today, that's a big deal, right? Because you got lights, drums, instruments, and all these things. So he was in charge of all of it. Screens, would have been in charge of all of it. So he said, I go for the day for interviews, and I said, when do I get to meet the pastor? I'd like to talk to the pastor. And like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't allow that. And he's like, what? Well, see, the pastor, he's got like 3 people around him, and those are the only people on our staff that interact with him. Other than that, we see him on the stage on Sundays. And I'm like, man. So I can't stress to you guys enough, be visible. Now, you say, Keith, what does that mean for me right now here at this conference? Okay? Put my little tagline up there. Show up. Show up. What do you mean by show up? Okay? I mentioned about all the things that there are to do in high school. Okay? And what high school are you guys from? The Way Christian Academy. Yeah. My son went to Calvary Christian. My son came home one day, sophomore year, and said, Dad, I want to run for student government. I'm like, good. Run for student government. He's like, yeah, Dad, there's a problem. I said, the office I want to run for, I'm the only one running for it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. That's a problem? I mean, like, number one, you're going to win. You're the only one, you're going to win. It's like, yeah, Dad, I'm the only one. I'm like, no. You're looking at this completely wrong, son. Calvary's got 850 students, and you're the only one who wants to run for that student government office? I'm like, dude, you're showing what it means to show up. Your schools are looking for young people to show up.
Yes.
You follow me?
Yes.
Your sports teams are dying for people to lead the way and just to show up. Be the one who's there early for practice for your sports team. Be the one who stays late after practice on your sports team. Be the one, if your school has clubs, a lot of times schools are trying to get clubs going, but they don't have kids that want to lead them.
Come on.
Be the one that shows up when there's a meeting. Hey, we're starting this, starting that. Show up. When they started STEM at Calvary, man, Drew's like, Dad, I'm going. He's studying engineering right now in college. I'm going. I'm going to show up. Okay? There's nothing worse when nobody says anything. Right? That's going to be kind of our next point. What I was last 2 years, we've visited a whole bunch of colleges, universities, like I said. Some of you are about to embark on that journey. That's a lot of fun. Enjoy that journey of visiting all these schools. Okay, how many of you have visited any college? Well, you're visiting one today, right? You're visiting a great one today. But enjoy the journey of that. We went to USF. My son is in engineering. There are 3,000 plus students, undergraduate, at the College of Engineering. And we did some interviews there. And my son said, what does it take to succeed here? And you know what they said? They're like, come up to this office once a week while you're a student. I was expecting some big, grandiose, here's what it takes to succeed in engineering. Ace your physics classes. No. Come up to this office once a week. The lady there, she was like the head of advising for the School of Engineering. Her office is right next to the dean. She said, we have 3,500 kids at School of Engineering. I can only tell you 10 of their names. She said, if you come up here and you find out what research projects we're doing, if you come up here and meet with your professor, if you show up for special things that we're doing and organizing special events, and we know what your name is, you're going to do great. Not only that, you're going to do great in college, you're going to do great in your career. People will follow the person that shows up. Write that down. People will follow the person that shows up. Okay? All right. There's the first view. Let's go to the second one. Second one. Have vision. Have vision. There is nothing worse. This happened this morning when I put something out to my team nobody responds. I woke up this morning, 6 o'clock, read some passages in my Bible, then I got on my email. Who has responded to me in the last 24 hours to something that I put out and said, please everyone reply and let me know. We have people all over the globe. I got people on teams in India, I got people in South America. Nobody. One guy spoke up this morning. He actually messaged me on Teams as soon as he saw I was online, and he's filling me in on everything that happened while I was sleeping and he was working over in India. And you know what I said to him? His name is Kashal. I said, you know what, Kashal? You're a rock star. You're my rock star on this team. Because, man, you responded. You filled me in with detail. You spoke up. And there's nothing worse when you go into a room and ask a question. Nobody says anything. Be the one to speak up. Now, there is a right way and a wrong way to speak up. You ever known someone who just likes to talk? Yes, shake your head, yes. Someone who just walk in there and they want to be the one. I know it all. And I'm going to try to impress you with everything that I know. And they talk ad nauseum and the clock is ticking, right? Maybe you think I'm doing that today, I hope not. But they just talk, okay? Write this word down. Be diplomatic. Be diplomatic. When you speak up, you know, I've led people long enough to know. You know what? And by the way, I taught a college marketing class for 8 years. You know what people are looking for in leaders and employees? Someone who can give a logical thought process. Write that down, logical thought process. When I take something to my team and need input, I'm impressed by the one who comes back and says, you know what, I think we can do this X, Y, and Z. Let me kind of explain this X, Y, and Z. They don't try to flatter me with everything they know. They say, you know what, let's think about process. Process and strategy. If you can think and talk strategically, you will go far. The best leaders are communicators, okay? Learn to communicate. Learn how to write an email properly without using AI. Learn how to be able to, you asked me years ago to do this, there's no way I would have been able to do it. I had some people that coached me on public speaking and interviews and those types of things. But communicators are the ones who will lead. We went to, one of the schools we visited was Embry-Riddle over in Daytona. And we went to a physics class, and it was about this size, wall to wall, and there was just tables all the way, full of students. There was 4 students sitting right here, right where you 4 are sitting. They were the only 4 that were engaged in that hour-long physics class. Everyone else is on their phone, on their computer, but these 4 right here in this physics class, asking questions. Teacher put something on the board. They were asking questions, giving input. Hey, what if we thought about it like X, Y, and Z? These 4, I nudged my son. I'm like, see those 4? They're going to rule the world one day, right? I'm sure other people in the room will as well, but those 4 sitting there. So afterwards, we go up to the professor, because my son had some questions for the professor. And I said, hey, those 4 kids? He's like, those are my best students. He said, they are so into it. They come and ask questions. They engage. They speak diplomatically. They're thinking strategically through the problems I'm putting up on the board. So learn to communicate. All right, number 3. Next one. Add value. Wherever you go, add value. Okay? What's that mean to you? Well, it kind of goes along with everything we've been saying, but step up. Step up. There is a lack of excellence in society, in businesses, in institutions, in churches. It kind of blows me away at times, like the low, mediocre bar of excellence. And you all have the chance to go in somewhere and set the bar, okay? Let me give you a few things here. I have a little motto, first class or no class with my teams. Like, we're gonna do this first class and do it better than everyone else, or we're not gonna do it at all. Or I'll find some other people that'll do it, okay? First class or no class. Boy, a lot of points here. I'm gonna skip over some of these. But be the one who steps up. When someone says, hey, we need someone to help lead this. Take the lead when no one else will. Raise your hand, okay? Raise your hand when someone's looking for a volunteer. All right, we're going to the next one, so I want to get everything in. Man, Damian, you were hitting on some of this so good earlier. The next one is have values, exhibit values, okay? And the little phrase I put here was stand out. Stand out. Have values and stand out. Because of who you are in the Lord, you've got extra stuff in your tool belt. because you followed, and I hope you are a follower of Jesus Christ. If you don't know who Jesus Christ is today, and you don't have a personal relationship with him, come get with someone before you leave this campus. Back there's a picture of Billy Graham. I'm not standing here today if it wasn't for Billy Graham.
Right.
Okay, long story, I'll share another time, but I am a Christian because of Billy Graham's ministry. Amazing. Amazing. But you've got something the rest of the world doesn't have, the unbeliever doesn't. You've got the power of the Holy Spirit working through you because of who you are in Christ. You've got something extra, okay? This thing about values. Several years back, on the anniversary of 9/11, which we just had 2 days ago, I had the opportunity to have dinner with John Ashcroft. Now, you guys are young, may not know that name. John Ashcroft was the Attorney General of the United States under George W. Bush on 9/11/2001. And I got to share a dinner table with him. The most fascinating dinner conversation I've ever had in my life. He took us through everything on 9/11, where he was. He was in an airplane over Ohio going to a meeting in a government jet. When a captain and a Secret Service guy came back to the plane and said, Mr. Ashcroft, you are in danger of being in the air. We're landing this plane immediately. And he said, no, you're taking me back to Washington. And after a little bit of an argument, they took him back to Washington. John Ashcroft is also a leadership guru. He's in his late 70s now. He teaches at Regent University in Virginia. But he said something that night I wrote down in my notes, and I have never forgotten it since. He said, leadership is about exposing people to values. Write that down. Leadership is about exposing people to values. Then he said, it's not about imposing values. It's about exposing people to values. And hopefully if you're a believer in here, you've got some additional values around integrity, honesty, morality. Guys, in 20 plus years of being in corporate America, I have seen some bad stuff. I have seen people's lives ruined over integrity, honesty, stealing, doing things after hours at the annual sales meeting that you shouldn't be doing, and the next day you get fired. Okay? Hopefully you've got some values where you're gonna stand out a little bit, and people are gonna see that you've got values, and you're gonna expose people to those values. You're not gonna impose them. You're gonna expose people. Please get me when I say this. Even though the world has gone completely mad, I mean completely mad and insane, they are looking for people to lead. They are looking for people with integrity and honesty to lead. And when they see you, that there's something a little different about you, oh, you went to a Trinity college, you went to whatever college, you went to whatever high school, hey, you're involved in church, there's gonna be something different about you, okay? All these things lead to one thing. If you can apply some of these things, you will raise the bar. You will be the one who sets the standard of excellence wherever you go, okay? Closing 2 seconds. If you put up the last slide back there, Gabe. Lead by being his ambassador. This verse changed my life about 7-8 years ago. I met a group of businessmen that just changed my life. Matter of fact, this group of businessmen runs the prayer breakfast, and 30 years ago they helped bring Billy Graham to Tampa in 1996. A great story for the revival at Raymond James Stadium. Write this verse down. Go study it later. 2 Corinthians 5:20. We are ambassadors for Christ. You will get to lead because you're going to go places your pastor's not going to be able to go. You're going to go into places where you're going to be able to meet people that aren't going to go to church, but they'll come to like a prayer breakfast. Or they'll get to have lunch with you and be exposed to your values and that you're a believer. I love the word ambassador here. The word ambassador literally means messenger who represents the king. Someday you're going to go into a corporation, you're going to go to a law firm, you're going to go work at a hospital as a doctor, you may even go to a secular university. Wherever you go, you are his ambassador. And when you see that your career is not just about providing for your family, it is, God's going to give you that career. But when you realize that that career is so God can strategically place you in places where you can be an ambassador for him, your life will change.
That's right.
I was in the corporate world forever, and about 8-10 years ago, I met some businessmen, and I learned this, and it brought about some serious personal revival. Wherever you go, God is strategically going to place you to be his ambassador. It's why I do this prayer breakfast. It's a group of businessmen. We put this thing on to try to tell people about Jesus. It's our way to reach other business people and other leaders. Okay, I'm at 30 minutes, and I better hang up. I'm going to stick around for a little bit. If you've got questions, let me know. But thank you for your attention, and thank you for writing notes. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you.
So great to be here. As you can see up there, I do a lot of cool, fun stuff. I get to cover the NFL for the Associated Press. That's my main job, and it almost cost me being here on time, because how many people are football fans in here? A lot of football fans. You watched the game last night? You see what happened to Tua Tagovailoa?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot that obviously needs to be written and talked about with Tua. So was on the phones, was talking to different people, reached out to Tom Brady, because there's a lot of people who think, oh, maybe Tom will come out of retirement. He's in Miami. But yeah, I'm here. Tom's not. And we're going to get into a little bit of a conversation on what it takes to lead like a champion. So as you can tell, I've had all these opportunities to interview a lot of different players. I've been to 10 Super Bowls. I've been in a lot of locker rooms. I know what it takes to win a championship. Now, what you saw up there, that's my job, that's my profession. But my passion is to talk about the work that Jesus has done in my life. So I've used my platform through my profession to really take my passion and make it a ministry, make it part of taking Jesus to my marketplace. So as you saw at the end, you saw Faith on the Field. That's a radio show that I launched 7 years ago. That's my wife, Remy. And we are on about 10 stations now. We've been on 17 radio stations across the country, sports radio stations. I have conversations with different athletes about the work that God has done in their life, and people tune in to hear some sports conversation, a little bit of faith in football, faith in baseball, depending on who the guest may be. So if you got social media, please reach out on there and follow, like, do all that cool stuff for Faith on the Field. Let people know as much as you can about us. We're growing, we keep growing, we do events, and we love that too as well. But I'm here to talk to you guys about leadership and what it takes to lead like a champion. Like I said, I've been in a lot of locker rooms. I've talked to all of the champions, talked to all of the athletes. And I want to give you some key principles to what it takes, what it looks like to be a leader, to lead like a champion. And at first, and we're going to go down with L-E-A-D. I'm not going to get into the ER. I'm saving that for the next one. But the L part, and that's going to come out, I promise. The L part, to be a leader, to lead like a champion, is you got to be a good listener. So I'm going to use some examples from different quarterbacks that I've talked to in here. Anyone familiar with Aaron Rodgers? Of course. Who's Aaron play for right now? New York Jets. So when Aaron went to the New York Jets, he talked about becoming a leader on a new team after spending his entire career with the Green Bay Packers. And one of the things that he did was in OTAs, which are organized team activities in the off-season, mini camp, before they even get into training camp, Aaron said it was important for him at lunchtime in the cafeteria to sit with different players each day, rather than have a little clique, a little group, to get to know other players, to get to know their likes and dislikes, to get to know who they are, their family, their background. And he would just sit and listen. And he came in to New York with a whole lot of people had misconceptions about Aaron based on some of the things that went down in Green Bay. And there are some people in the media who have different views of Aaron based on some of his philosophies and the things he talks about. But the players on his team found him to be a great leader because it started with being a good listener. We can't be great leaders if we're not willing to listen to the people we're leading. If we don't know what they like, if we don't know what they dislike, if we don't know who they are, what makes them tick, what they're going through. People are going through different things each day. And if we can't understand that sometimes, God bless you, sometimes the things that they're going through may impact how in football they perform on the field, in life, in class, in school, it may impact how they're doing at their job or wherever they may be. So great leadership starts with being a great listener. Next, I'm going to go to E in lead. The E, I could have gone several different ways. I went with encourager. Because to be a good leader, I feel like you got to be able to encourage those around you. Your teammates, if it's in sports, your classmates in school, your colleagues at work, your peers, wherever you are. You have to be a great encourager. And I want to use Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott as an example. And if you listen to Faith on the Field, the intro is Dak Prescott saying, you're listening to Faith on the Field, so tune in, you'll find out. But when Dak, I believe it was October 2020, he was off to a great start. It was during the COVID year where fans weren't in the stadiums. Nobody was watching the games except on TV. They had remember the cardboard cutouts? You guys remember the cardboard cutouts instead of fans? Well, Dak was going into the final year of his contract. The Cowboys hadn't given him a new one at that point. He was having a great season, and then he had a gruesome injury. Broke his ankle, his leg. It was just a horrible looking injury. And that was the end of his season, and people at the time speculated this could be the end of Dak Prescott's career with the Dallas Cowboys. And what Dak did was, after surgery, a few days later, he went on Instagram, and in just a 90-second video, he talked about, and I'm going to read for a little bit from what he said. He said, "I'm excited for God's purpose and plan." So what he did was, he deflected what happened to him, and he said, this is all part of God's purpose and plan for his life. And all of us go through stuff where we may question, like, why is this happening to me? You got a quarterback for America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, final year of a contract, suffers a gruesome injury, doesn't know what his future is going to look like. And he goes on Instagram and shoots a video, says, hey, I'm excited for God's purpose and plan. I want to see what he's going to do next. But what Dak also said in that was so impressive to me. I'm looking forward to support my teammates and those around the league that need it. He could have taken a step back and said, hey, I'm gonna use all of this time to work on my rehab, which we know he's gonna do, to be the best player I can be when I come back. And he could point it to him. But instead, he took that time to encourage those around him and his teammates and the fans and say, I'm going to support my teammates and those around the league that need it. So in his time of absolute distress, Dak's thinking about encouraging other people. It's easy for us to, hey, when things are going great, right? We want to encourage everybody, hey, you can do it too. I'm happy for you. Everything's going to be awesome. But how are we reacting when things are bad in our lives? When things like absolutely stink? Can we encourage those around us when things are going terrible for us? That's the E part of being a great leader, is being an encourager. Got to be a good listener. Got to be a great encourager. I'm not going to just stand here and talk at you guys. I want you to interact a little bit. So who can tell me the example that I used of a quarterback for being a great listener?
Aaron Rodgers.
How about for being a great encourager? Here we go. What social media platform did he use to post that video after surgery? Or you guys know Bill Belichick?
Yeah.
He calls it InstaFace, but he's on it now. To be a great leader, to lead like a champion, you've got to be a great listener, you've got to be an encourager, and the A stands for, anyone know where I'm going here? You need to be authentic. I see you guys writing it down. I like that. I appreciate that. You have to be authentic. Last week, right before the start of the season, I sat down and interviewed Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen. They're off to a 2-0 start. Any Bills fans in here? No? Cool. My daughters are Buccaneers fans. I grew up in Philly. I wrote a book about the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl.
Yes,
Eagles fan.
definitely.
Did you read Birds of Prey, P-R-A-Y? No, not yet. I'll have to get you a copy of that.
Okay,
It's only, I don't have any more left, but it's, I'll find
I'll
it.
give you my number.
I'll find one for you. Okay.
Please.
So I asked Josh Allen about being a great leader, and this is what he told me. He said, I think it's being authentic to yourself. Knowing yourself is the number one thing. You can't sit there and harp on guys and expect them to respect you if you're not doing the right things and you're not being authentic. Guys, the number one thing that other players in the locker room, that other people at work, that other classmates can see, that other colleagues, wherever you are in any walk of life, they can smell phony. You can't be phony. You can't be fake. You have to be authentic to be a great leader. He said, if you're talking out of one side of your mouth and then doing the opposite, that's not going to work. So he said, it's making sure that guys see me do it as an example. Let me lead by example. Let me show you the way. Then when I speak, I feel like that holds a lot of weight. So as I've grown over the years, I've been able to lead by example and do it physically. And now being in a spot where I've got a little bit more verbal, I got to show guys and tell guys that haven't been here, make sure that we're following the right set of standards and rules that apply to being a Buffalo Bill. I have seen players in the NFL who act like great leaders, but truly aren't and don't have the respective teammates because they're not authentic. They say one thing behind a microphone, and then in the locker room they say something else. Or they go on camera and they point the credit to themselves, and then when they throw an interception or something goes wrong, well, my receiver ran the wrong route, or I didn't have enough protection, the offensive line didn't keep me safe. That's not great leadership. Great leadership is taking accountability, being authentic, being responsible, and making sure that you are true to yourself. You're leading by example. You're not fake. You're not a phony. And you're letting people know who you are.
Yeah.
The next part 4 of 6, I'm going to go to leader. Being a great leader is, the D requires discipline. You got to have discipline. And there's no greater example in sports, I think really maybe in any profession, of someone having more discipline than Tom Brady. The guy played till he was 45 and was still at the top of his game. Why? Because he had the discipline. He had the discipline to take care of his body, to take care of his mind, his eating habits, the TB12 program, how strictly he worked out, how he'd get 8-9 hours sleep, how he'd be laying in bed with an iPad going over the other team's defenses. It takes discipline to get to where we want to go. To be a champion in life, whether it's sports, whether it's the boardroom, whether it's the classroom, wherever you go, we need discipline. We got to have discipline. Sometimes that's a struggle for me. Like, I'm not going to stand here and tell you, like, I woke up today, this is what I had to do. I knew today was my day off from, I get 1 or 2 days a week when the NFL season, the next 23 weeks are crazy, and I made sure I went to the gym. But what I didn't do, and I should have done, ideally I want to wake up, I want to dive into the Bible, I want to journal a little bit, then I want to start my day. But I was like, no, I'm going to go, I got to run, I just set the alarm, I got to do this, I got to do that. I went to the gym. First thing I did. Still haven't taken the Bible out. I will. Hold me to it at some point today. I have to. Sometimes I take out the Bible app and then I get distracted. How many have a Bible app on their phone? Easy to be looking at that. It's great. I love it. It's on the go. It's wherever you are. But then there's a text message.
Yep.
Then there's an email. Then you're responding. The next thing you know, you're looking at InstaFace, Facebook, whatever it may be, Snapchat, TikTok. I don't do the TikTok. Not yet. Everybody's trying to get me on there. I'm afraid of it. But I should be.
Me too.
It takes great discipline to be great at what we want to do. It takes a tremendous amount of discipline. Like, you think about Tom Brady's eating habits. Instead of eating ice cream, it would be like avocado ice cream that he would make. Healthy kind. I know I say that word funny. How do you say that word? The fruit.
Avocado.
I used to say avocado. My wife would make fun of me.
Aguacate.
Yeah, I say it so funny. So I say it so weird. I'm reluctant to say it, but who cares, right? Avocado. There we go. Avocado ice cream. He eats, like, you have to have an incredible amount of discipline. And I see so many players in the NFL who don't succeed because they don't have that discipline. They put minimal effort in there. I got the talent, I got the skills, I got to be where I'm at right now because I'm great, and I was great in high school, I was great in college, and I'm gonna let my talent and abilities take over, but then they get to the next level and they don't succeed because they don't have the discipline to put the work in, to study the play. You know how hard it is to study a playbook? Any athletes in here? Any football players in here? I'm coaching my daughter's flag football. They're 6th graders. And I've got some plays in there for them. And I'm just trying to teach them like 4 or 5 plays. An NFL playbook's got about 1,000. And the quarterbacks have to know not only what they're doing on each play, but what the offensive line protection looks like, what each player's skill position, what their route is going to be, where is this receiver going to run, where is that receiver going to go, what the running back's supposed to do. It takes a tremendous amount of discipline to know these plays inside and out. You got to stand at the line of scrimmage, look at a defense that's coming at you to take your head off, and then recognize that the play that the coach gave me in my ear is not going to work because that defense is going to stop that. So now I got to pivot to another play that may work. It takes a tremendous amount of discipline to know that playbook inside and out. You got to know a playbook. You got to take care of your body. Guys who want to go out and party on a Friday night or a Saturday night, you're in the NFL. You can't be doing that. You can't be going out and partying. Whatever you're doing in life, you can't be going out the night before something major, a test. If you're at work, you got a presentation. If you're a teacher, you got a class, whatever it may be. We need to have discipline to be great leaders. Next up, E. First E was encourage, be an encourager. The second E is execute. You have to be able to execute the game plan. You have to execute the strategic plan in life, whatever it may be, in whatever you're doing and whoever you're leading. You got to have a plan set forth. Then you have to be able to execute it. If you can't execute that plan, how can you lead? Patrick Mahomes says, always actions are first for me. You have to prove that you're doing the right way in order to say anything. So Patrick, 3-time Super Bowl champion, going for a 3-peat this year, he believes that actions are first. That before he even opens his mouth to be a great leader, he's got to do it. I think if you come in the building every single day and work hard and you show that you really truly care, then when you use your words, they mean more. It's not just words. It's easy for us to sit there and tell people what to do, especially when you're in a leadership position. Hey, you do this, you'll succeed. You do that. What are you doing as the leader? How are you presenting yourself? How are you projecting what you've accomplished? How are you taking time and putting the effort and the work in to make sure you have success? Can you get the job done? Patrick's done a whole lot. He's had a whole lot of success. So now when he speaks up in the locker room, players are going to listen. You can't just walk in there and demand respect. You can't walk into anywhere, any building, any arena, any setting, wherever you go, and ask people to give you that respect. You have to earn it. And how do you earn it? You execute. You execute the game plan. You execute your strategies for life. You get the job done and you do it properly. You do it well. And now others are going to want to emulate you. They're going to want to follow you. Hey, how did you reach that level of success? How did you get to where you are? How did you become here? Come follow me. Do what I'm doing. You got to work hard in order to execute the game plan. The last part of leadership, got to be a great listener. great encourager. You need to be authentic. You must be disciplined. You have to execute properly. The last part is relatable. I thought of different ways to go with R. I thought about respect, but I wanted to go with relatable. And I say this because in conversations with different athletes, when they look at the leaders on their team, when they look at those guys that they consider, that they view to be great leaders, the one common denominator it always goes back to is they're relatable. How many Buccaneers fans do we have in here? It's a good amount. Any Baker Mayfield fans? Now be honest, when the Bucs signed Baker Mayfield after Tom Brady was here, did you think they were going to be that good last year, go to the playoffs and win a game? A lot of people had their doubts. It was a prove-it year for Baker. Baker had a lot of baggage coming in. He'd been on 3 teams prior. There were some signs of immaturity. There were different signs of he might not be that guy who can lead a team. But from day one, when he walked into the Buccaneers locker room, he didn't demand respect. He went out there and he worked his tail off to win the starting job, because he was competing in training camp for a starting job. But he showed leadership by being relatable. You see him out there headbutting guys. Like, you got a quarterback headbutting his teammates in celebration. Guys are like a big center who's like 300 pounds, and here's Baker, this big, he's barely bigger than me. And he's out there headbutting guys. He's relating to them. He's on their level. He's not sitting in a locker room by himself. I've seen this in some locker rooms. I've seen this on some teams. There are some players who now they go in and they don't want just one locker stall. They need 3, because they don't want anyone next to them. They want to put all of their stuff in one. They want to get dressed in the other. They want that separation from the rest of their team. And because they're superstars, the organization gives it to them. If you're that guy, people are going to look at you a certain way. If you're that way in life and you're trying to lead people, yet you want to take a step back. Yeah, I want to lead you, but no, I don't want to be too close. Yeah, I want to lead you, but no, I want to put myself up here and you're down here. Let's keep that separation. No, you have to be relatable. It goes a little bit back to Aaron Rodgers being a great listener by sitting with different guys in the cafeteria, right? I've talked to players who they've seen quarterbacks who are great leaders for the offense, but they never talk to the defense, and they don't talk to the special teams. You can't be a leader you can't be an overall leader and only have a little small group, a little clique of offensive players that you talk to that are your crowd. So in order to be a great leader, you got to be relatable. You have to be willing to walk in any building, anywhere, and know the people around you. I'll bring back Tom Brady for a second. What really impressed me about him when he came to Tampa Bay was he took the time to introduce himself to guys on the practice squad. Anybody know what that is, practice squad in the NFL? So you got 53 players on the team. Then you have 17 other players who aren't quite good enough to make the active roster, but they're there just in case somebody else gets hurt. So the practice squad are guys who are they're hanging on to a dream. And some of them get a shot and they take advantage of it and they go on to have a tremendous successful career. And some guys, that's all they'll be. They'll be on a practice squad, they'll get cut 3-4 times a season, and they'll bounce back. So here's Tom Brady walking into a locker room. I think everybody knows who he is. Pretty sure. And he's introducing himself to a guy on a practice squad. Hey man, I'm Tom Brady. Do you know how that resonated with these guys? Like, hey, he's one of us. He's not just he's a mega celebrity, and he's being relatable. Baker he comes into the locker room last year, he takes over for someone of that stature, of the magnitude of Tom. How's he going to walk in his shoes? You can't fill his shoes. Well, how's he going to do it? He did it his way. Tom had one way about him. Baker's way was he's going to hang out with all of the guys on the team. He's going to walk around and fist bump and high five and headbutt and everything with all of the players around him on that team. He became extremely relatable. And to a man, you talk to players on the Buccaneers, they respected that about him. And they say, we found him to be extremely relatable, down to earth, a guy that we really enjoy hanging around. And now we want to run through a brick wall for him. And you saw that team go out there and win last year and have a ton of success. So to recap, leadership as a champion, to lead like a champion, you got to be a great listener. You have to be an encourager. You need to be authentic. No phony in you. You need discipline. You have to execute the game plan and be relatable. Now, all of that's awesome, right? All of these examples I've used are of famous players in the NFL who've accomplished a lot. And Aaron Rodgers, he's won a Super Bowl. Dak hasn't. Josh hasn't. Tom's won 7. Patrick's won 3. Baker hasn't won any. So I used examples of guys who've, in totality, won 11 Super Bowls. I will tell you this, and some of these guys may or may not agree, and they may have different thoughts and different beliefs. But in order to be a great leader, I believe you need to be a good follower. In order to be a great leader, you have to be a good follower. And the ultimate example of who to follow is Jesus Christ. We may want to follow what Aaron Rodgers does as a listener, or what Dak Prescott does as an encourager, or how Josh Allen is authentic, or how Tom Brady has discipline, or how Patrick Mahomes executes the game plan, or how Baker Mayfield is relatable. And that's great. And those are the examples I wanted to use for you to be great leaders like champion, like the ultimate champions. But in order to be a great leader, you have to be a good follower. And the only example we need to follow is that of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. We follow his example. Paul, who wrote so many books in the New Testament, writes in Corinthians, and he says to the church of Corinth, imitate me by following Christ, by imitating Christ. If we lead, and Jesus was a great example of servant leadership. Jesus said, I came here to serve, not to be served. The Son of God came to serve others. As I get into developing the next book and I go leadership and S is going to be servant. Jesus led by showing compassion. Jesus led by showing love. Jesus led by sacrifice. Jesus was all of these things. A great listener, an encourager. He was authentic. Nobody had more discipline. 40 days and 40 nights being tempted. Nobody can execute God's plan more perfectly than Jesus Christ. And while he may not have at the time seemed relatable, he loves each and every one of us. So he relates to all, no matter how people want to view that and divide that. So as you take from this conversation, listening and encouraging and being authentic and being disciplined and executing and being relatable, I want you to consider who you're following. It's easy at your age to follow other friends. And I'll tell you this. When I was your age, and I look back on it now, the people closest to me then, I don't even know where they are in life at this point. Friends will come and friends will go, and relationships will develop and they'll evolve, and some are meant to be in your life for a small season or a chapter, and some are meant to be in it forever. But if we follow other people and seek their approval, we'll never be satisfied. If we follow the Lord and seek His approval, we'll have true self-esteem, fulfillment, joy, and peace. So I want you to think about that as you guys are putting together a game plan for life on how you can become leaders, how you can lead like champions, how you can be the ultimate at what you do. Think about who you follow when you walk out that door. Consider whose opinion matters more to you. I see so many adults. So many of us adults will get in conversations and arguments on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, or whatever it may be. And we're wasting so much of our time engaging with people whose opinion doesn't matter. Why are we putting so much time and effort into trying to convince someone else to like the same people we like, or root for the same team that we root for, or to vote for whoever we want to vote for, or whatever it may be? The only opinion that matters is God's. Don't get so caught up in life trying to win the approval of other people. You will spend so much time that's wasted that you'll never get back. Focus on yourself. Focus on being the best version of you. Focus on the leadership skills that you can work on and enhance. And think about who you're going to follow. I think that about wraps it up for me. Joe, if I have a few minutes, I'll take a couple questions.
Do it.
You want to do that?
Yeah, do it.
Okay. I think I have about 5 minutes or so before. You guys have any questions about anything that I do? You know what? Before I do that, let me do this. I have a T-shirt. It says my story, His glory. Faith on the field. It's kind of, I've always used, I didn't share my story of how I became a believer today, but I use my story.